Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine, and today we're going to do a targeted webinar on creating visual supplements. As it happens, the basis we'll use for the specific examples that we discuss and create will be taken from a course in the EdD program, but these principles apply to any class that wants you to create a visual supplement, especially if it happens to be in APA style. Since this is a targeted webinar, we're going to gloss over our normal discussion of Writing Center services and focus on first how to access our catalog of related webinars, which include discussing things like how to create flowcharts. Look for things for your program by scrolling down on our webinars page to the tabbed view and selecting your program, in this case, Lead EdD, and you'll see a listing of all the webinars that we have that specifically tie in with classes in that program. Alright, so we're going to focus on three objectives today. First, about how to format and label figures in APA style. Second, the visual components described in Leadership 756 Week 2 Assignment 1 to understand what that is asking. And then we'll finish by looking at how to create that sort of visual components called for in the assignment using Microsoft Word. Now, there are many other tools that you can use to create visual components, but ultimately you will have to format in Microsoft Word as part of your APA course paper, so we're going to show you how to use that because we know you'll have it available. Now, when you're looking at a figure in a paper formatted in APA style, there are a couple components that we need to differentiate, which are pointed out with the colored arrows here. First of all, where on the left hand you see figure 4 in bold. That is the figure label. It is the word figure and then the number for the figure. The very first figure in the paper is figure 1. The second, going from top down, from the top of the first page to the last, figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, figure 4. If you put another figure, you'll need to renumber the ones after that. There is a way to get Word to automatically number the figures for you. I will say that most people, they don't have too many figures, so just numbering 1, 2, 3 is not a problem. But if you're at the dissertation stage and you've got a lot of figures and you keep moving them around, set up an appointment and I'll be happy to show you how to do that. It is a more advanced function, and most students just find that it's not great use of their time to learn how to do that when they only have 2 or 3 figures. After the figure label comes the text that you see in italics. This is the figure title. You might say the name of the figure, but figure title. And then we have the image itself, which is the graph. And then after the figure will come some following text. It is possible to include a note, say if you have a figure you're reproducing from another source, to acknowledge where that source came from, but that's basically the word note in italics, period, and then the reference information. So not a big deal and not something that should be coming up in this particular assignment. The following text could be a paragraph, it could be a heading, but as you can see, there are no horizontal lines in between the figure title and the start of the figure, and no horizontal lines between the end of the figure and the following text. So some rules for formatting this. First, make sure you bold the figure label. That's figure 4 in this example. Second, make sure to number the figures sequentially using numbers, not letters. So figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, figure 4, etc. Make sure you italicize the figure title and capitalize it using title case. So any word with 4 or more letters, among other things, gets the first letter capitalized. And don't add any extra horizontal lines. Sometimes you'll have a program that will produce a figure with a border. In general, APA style won't put borders around that because it's considered a distracting detail. And make sure you don't replicate the title in the figure itself. So if you want to imagine if above this graph it said car sales growth in a different font, that would be redundant because we have car sales growth here already as the figure title. So it's part of avoiding unnecessary and redundant repetition. So by removing those details or not adding them in to begin with, the reader can more easily focus on the important things, like the content of this graph. Now, your figure title should be descriptive, and sufficiently detailed so that a reader who has a vision impairment and is using screen reading software, which will just say, oh, Figure 1, whatever the title it is, that readers with vision impairments who are using screen reading software, that they will have an understanding of what is being pictured. So a title as simple as car sales is not ideal. Car sales growth, okay, that's better. Car sales growth 2010 to 2020, okay, even if we don't know exactly what the trend is over this decade-long period, that's enough to say, all right, I understand this is talking about the last decade of data, or it's showing data from the last decade of car sales growth. And do make sure that the figure title is italicized and in title cases we discussed earlier. Let's talk about this assignment, Leadership 756's Week 2 Assignment 1, Imagining an Optimistic Future. Now, for this particular webinar, we're not going to focus too much on the content, the written content that is, because this assignment here, it is focusing on one particular thing, which is how you create this impression of progress that you use to help motivate yourself. And the assignment description, I've reformatted it here for convenience. It starts out with an overview. For this assignment, we want you to complete the following positive imagining visualization exercise. The person can start off by focusing on the positive images in which he or she overcomes specific problem areas or goals in life. They are instructed to visualize what you would like to happen, not necessarily what you believe. Try to imagine the future in a more positive light. If something the person has sought to achieve has not occurred, the person can always visualize that the next time they attempt this, that it works out better, even if this time it did not. Then the person can move to a more general plan and visualize the self as a globally effective in several major areas of life. As a help in selecting positive images, individuals can ask themselves these questions. What are the areas in life you are avoiding, worrying about, or ruminating over? And what are tasks to do or problems I face? If the person visualizes the possibility of attaining goals and overcoming goals in a more positive way, this may presumably help to block or undermine negative visualizations that are inhibiting motivation. Use the storyboard technique to do this. This technique uses progressive imagery to tell an optimistic story of the person starting a new goal, project, or problem, and then successfully moving through it and overcoming it to a positive conclusion. The person will visualize intermediate acts or implement steps, as well as the final outcomes. And then the instructions. So it's going to be a 3 to 5 page paper divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is going to be synthesizing the readings and resources on optimism, approximately 1 page, so it should be fairly concise. Second section, and remember this is a 3 to 5 page paper. In the section, you're going to write about your experience in the positive imagining exercise. So this is going to be more of a reflection, talking about what you had in mind, the milestones you've imagined, and then section 3, this is where our visualization comes in. Once you've written about what you describe, now you want to show that by creating a visual element. It says, please include a third section where you include visuals, pictures, diagrams, or charts to illustrate your positive imagining. Some of you may want to include a type of vision board in this section, but remember, your visuals need to focus on the steps to reach the goal, not just the end goal or problem to be solved. The intention for the third part of the paper is for you to have a visual you can display to remind you of your optimistic story of new goal, project, or problem, and then successfully moving through it and overcoming it to a positive conclusion. So there are a couple things I want to point out here. The first is that this is actually rather open-ended on what type of visual you produce and include. They say pictures, diagrams, charts are all fair game, provided that they meet the requirements of illustrating the steps along the way and not just the end point. So one one picture of someone running through the finish line, probably not enough, because that's just the end goal. But if you have a sequence of pictures that lead to that, that's certainly an option. And let's just check the rubric here. So let's see, we see that most of the credit here is going into that narrative and explanation of the positive imagining experience and the steps to achieve the goal. And that there's also going to be, let's see, 1 out of 12. Okay, so that is about 8.5%. And of the score is going for the visual elements. So that's going to be the difference between an A and a B easily. So make sure you do include that. It will be easier to do after you've described the positive imagining experience. So that's where we're going to go next. Now, as you can see here, I have gone ahead and I've just copy and pasted the instructions here into the APA course paper template. And I'm going to start dividing this into specific tasks because I want to get full credit for the graphics, so I want to make sure that I've done everything that the instructions say to do. So I'm going to italicize this to tell me that this is an explanation, but the specific requirement is here. And so I can take that and I can form that into more specific sub-bullets. Goal or problem. So some of you may be aware that I am also an opera director. I run a company called Really Spicy Opera, and through this company, I coach a lot of singers, many of whom are early in their careers, and so have things that they're working on, the goals that they want to achieve, problems they want to overcome, things they want to add to their repertoire, or the list of the operas or roles that they've performed. So let's say that this goal that we're working with is stage fright. And let's see the steps here. Okay, well, this is going to be numbered, so I'm going to go ahead and use the numbered list tool here. And step 1 is going to be imagining the feeling of a successful performance. Now, you will have your own obstacle here. Here, I picked one that I can quickly use to develop some visuals afterwards. So, in my outline here, how I successfully moved through the goal to a positive conclusion. I have chosen to focus on all the great things that happen rather than the things that might scare you or drive you nuts involving stage fright. So, imagining the feeling of a successful performance, walking confidently onto the stage, how great the supporting applause feels, how joyously exciting it is to sit down at the piano with the audience waiting, rapt, imagining the pleasure of playing the piano, imagining the applause at the end of the performance. And that's how I've chosen to do it. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at this thing. I'll also consider rebounding well and maintaining optimism even if the intended outcome did not happen. So you can certainly work on that angle. The one I have chosen for now is successfully moving to the positive conclusion. All right. Now, with the instruction here, it says include things to illustrate the positive imagining. So there are a couple ways we could do it. I could even just take this text here and let's look at some of the tools we have available in Microsoft Word. So if I go to Insert, there are a number of options here, and you could get a picture for anywhere else and insert it using this tool here. But we're going to go ahead and use the Smart Art tool. The Smart Art lets you create visuals where Word does a lot of the work for you. And you can just browse this list looking to see an idea. Now, we're really talking about a process of visualization, so I think the Process tool is a great way to start. How you choose, there are some differences that are just cosmetic, and there are some that show more of a process of how things loop around, so pick the one that appeals to you most. But in my case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this one here, Basic Process. And so if I start pasting what I had in here, you see I just pasted that and it automatically filled that in. I'm going to go ahead and remove these empty ones. And you can see that Word automatically resizes that for me. Close that out. All right, so I have a visual already. And one thing I can do with this is I can change the size here. And now I'm going to go ahead and label it. So far this is the first figure here, so it's just figure 1. I bold that, and then I need the title. You could call it How I Visualize Success, or Visualizing Success, a Successful Performance. You can even call it In 6 Steps. Now the next thing I might do here is say, well, okay, can I simplify this? And one reason I might expand this is that I see, I want to add more things to it. So I'm going to go ahead here and I will add a text box. And I'm going to go ahead and going to take that text box, going to center this, and because imagining applies to all of these, I'm going to take it out to create a more streamlined set of text. Now, provided I have written up my narrative here for that section, and I've explained why I'm doing this or how these are going to be important, I now have a visual that matches that aligns with it, that is formatted in APA style. This is fine, and to have an internal lines there. It's just we don't want to add extra lines here. Like if we're adding that serves no extra purpose, so don't. So I've got my figure. I can refer to it in the body of the text. For example, figure 1 shows and so that's how you refer to it. In general, you should mention you should mention a figure before you depict it, but you don't need to give the full title when you mention it, just figure 1, and then we see, oh, figure 1, yes, that's what they're referring to. So no confusion there. There are other ways that you can create visuals here, including with other tools in Word. Again, if we go back to Insert and Smart Art, you can include different types of visuals or even recast this. So let's say I took this and said, you know what, I feel like it's not linear. I feel like this is a cycle where it goes around. So you can go ahead and select Smart Art and re-envision this as a cycle. Now I'll have to move things around a little bit to reflect this. This text here, I'll move that around. But, it's still my figure 1. The title is still the same. I might change that to be in a 6-step cycle. But we still have figure 1, we still have the image, we're still depicting the thing described here. Now, if you want to do other things here, let's go ahead and in Smart Art you can say work on showing a pyramid for a hierarchy, process things in a loop. So there are different ways you can visualize this with just a couple quick clicks. Perhaps that one is not the best one for the amount of text we have. So make sure that it remains readable. So you have options there. Now the instructions refer to different possibilities that you might use. So the storyboard technique, sometimes people don't use text, but they'll use images instead, in which case you can just copy images into Word and rearrange them or annotate them to do what you need. Let me show you an example here. So let's say you want to go with the visual storyboard angle on this and say, okay, I need a couple pictures. So I've gone to Google and I search for musician walking, and I'm like, oh, okay, this will do for what I need for my visual collage here. So I'm going to copy that image, and then in Word, let's go ahead and start on a new page here, figure 2. Now, do you need all of this here? Well, probably not of that size. We're not going to have a lot of room for stuff unless we resize it. So you can just click and drag to shrink it. You can also crop the image. So I right-click on it, or control-click if you're on a Mac, and I can crop this down. And then as part of what becomes your image, you can take this and you can add, for example, a text box. And then I can go back to Google Images and let's see, what do I have here? Walking confidently onto the stage. Okay. Now, this is just for the purposes of illustrating how to do this. You can get your images from any source. Just make sure that you credit accordingly. And we're going to go ahead and crop this. Now, the fact that it looks like there's a ukulele on the left and the acoustic guitar here on the right, well, we'll ignore that little bit here. Step 1, I can copy that. So I just selected this, and then you can hit Control-C or Command-C on the Mac, or go up to the menu and select Edit Copy. So it's a way to quickly reuse elements like this. Step 2, and then you can repeat this until you get 6 steps, or however many you're including. Just make sure that you caption this. So it's probably going to be something similar. Whatever you choose to call it. Go ahead and italicize that, and then you can add your other elements here. So that's all that's done using Microsoft Word. While there are other tools out that you can access, including graphic design tools and specialized online tools, the question is really, what do you need to do for this assignment? And we're not grading you as if you were a professional graphic designer. It's, can you visualize whatever it is you've chosen for your own means? So it does not need to be fancy. It does not need to be created using special software, but it helps if it conveys how you think about this. So if you view the steps to a successful performance as a cycle, well then, taking this, and I've selected the graphic here, and say, well, I do view this as a process where it's circular, goes around in order, then picking something that conveys that to me is helpful because it more accurately reflects my idea. So, and I might even say, okay, I see imagining as being at the center of this. And then I adjust this accordingly. And there you go. So I hope that was helpful. Make sure to review the rubric so that you have everything there, that you've synthesized the readings and resources on optimism. You've discussed your imagining experience and how the different steps break down. That you include a visual of your positive imagining process. And then make sure you do your due diligence to make sure that this is all referenced, cited correctly, and proofread. That's it. Thank you for joining us here, and we have more content coming soon. Bye.